How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer, a sincere answer, as unbiased of an answer as any human being has the ability to give. That is what I will do for you guys. Yeah, any question is okay. Doesn't matter if you are a left wing person or a right wing person, if you are asking a simple question or a complicated one. Everyone is welcome here. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions with good faith answers. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can be particularly weird right now to try to figure out what's going on in the world, what's going on with our government. There's so much misinformation and propaganda out there. So, this is the show where you can ask all those questions and you don't have to worry about getting roasted or debated or judged or anything like that. I know that certain people, depending on where you live, you might not feel comfortable asking these questions in person. Like maybe people will think you're some sort of a libtard, or maybe people will think you're a fascist, depending on what you ask. Well, you can ask all those questions here, and there's no judgment, there's no roasting, there's no debating. This is not a show for fights. This is not a show for people to come on and yell at each other and try to own each other and call each other names. There is no fighting here. There's no debating here. Debates are stupid and they are not productive. It is just engaging on the facts, figuring out where we can agree and where can we disagree, and trying to circle in towards a shared reality once again, because that's one of the biggest problems with our politics right now is that people can't really agree even on what's happening. There's so much misinformation and propaganda out there that everybody has a completely different idea of what is even happening, and I think that is toxic to our culture and our country. And so that is what we're doing here. I'm trying to get everybody back on board. I'm trying to get everybody back into a shared reality so that we can all at least agree. Maybe we don't agree on what needs to be done, but we can at least all agree on what is happening, you know? Alet says, "Hey, just got in. Where do you stand politically in general?" I call myself a progressive Democrat. I vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. But I am more on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party than like the centrist establishment wing. Dan Blackword says, "I disagree with that. Everyone does agree." Oh man, so we can't even start there, Dan. We can't even have a foundation built on that, my guy. Welcome everybody. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a good one. And yeah, let's answer some questions about politics today. Dole Banana Conspiracy says, "Hello, Jarrett. What are your thoughts on the Swedish model of social democracy?" I mean, I basically think that every country in the Western world is doing a mixed model better than America is. You know, America is a mixed model as much as people would love to say that it's just a capitalist system or like a straight representative democracy. Like we have public works that are funded with taxes, which is essentially socialist, and we have employee owned companies, which is essentially communist. But every other Western nation is doing it better because they have things like, universal health care, and I think that we need that. I think that if I could, control C, control V, a different system onto our country, it would be, like the Swedish model, the Norway model, stuff like that. Right. Stoked to Fire says Walmart Ezra Klein, no shade. I mean, I take umbrage with that. I feel like there are a lot of differences between Ezra Klein and myself, and I don't fancy myself the bargain basement version of anybody. Thank you very much. C Flan, good to see you again. Crazy how much I like seeing a person with different political leanings pop up on my screen. Good day to you, my guy. I'd love to push you a little bit, C Flan. I'd love to get you a little bit more on Team Jarrett. So maybe we can start discussing what we differ on. Maybe I can Toast on Jelly says, "Wait, I'm thinking of Ezra Miller." Oh God, yeah, I don't want to be associated with that dude at all. St. Martin says, "Why is American government website siding with one political party?" It's obviously this is a violation. The government is not supposed to have any sort of political bias. It is not supposed to be pushing the American population towards one party or the other. So it is a violation of what's called the Hatch Act. And the reason why it's happening is because the people that are currently in charge of the government, they don't care about breaking the law, and they are going to use every every tool that they have available to them to try to lie and cheat their way into more power and influence. So there you go. Let's says so scary how deep the government propaganda is. I completely agree. Stoked to Fire says I like Ezra Klein. He's fine. He's interesting. I don't agree with a lot of the things that he says. I read his book Abundance, and I think there's some interesting stuff in there, but there's also some really banana stuff in there. Dole Banana Conspiracy says, would you say America is in danger of falling under fascistic rule? I think that that is one of the truest things I have ever read in my entire life. It is in danger. America, you in danger, girl. I cannot agree with that sentence strongly enough. Spectre says, why did the U.S. bomb Syria? Yeah, is this thing that happened recently, Spectre? Because I feel like that's a thing that happened a while ago. I don't remember reading any recent reports about America bombing Syria, but I could be wrong about that. Years ago. Yeah, then that's too long ago for me to remember, unfortunately. Alrighty, let's see here. Do, 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 do. Louis Son says, why Democrats don't talk about the flotilla, I think is what you're saying here. Chuck Thompson says, why can't the left tell the truth? The left actually tells the truth way more than the right does, Chuck, and I would love to send you the data that I have on that, although I doubt that you're actually interested in the data. So why don't the Democratic Party talk about the flotilla? You know, I know it's easy to look at all the things that the Democrats are doing or not doing and find fault with it. I would encourage you to recognize that there's a lot of stuff going on. And so it might not be priority one in the middle of a government shutdown that, not only is the Democratic Party trying to make it so that we can reopen the government so that the people that are hurt by a government shutdown are not hurt any longer. Not only are they trying to get the Republican Party to acquiesce on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies so that everybody's healthcare premiums don't go up like 75% or something. But also, they are trying to fight against an authoritarian who is trying to erode our democracy and is accepting billions of dollars from dark money donors. So yeah, there's a lot going on right now. JP 1312 says, because Democratic Party are weak and pathetic. That is not a question, JP. Ask a question, I'm going to boot you. Albert Feinstein says, Republicans never let facts get in the way. That is accurate. Tunberg says, is this like attack liberal stoke off thread? I don't know what that means. I kind of feel like you are making I think you probably spelled stroke wrong. Like you mean like a JO system. So I guess just be a better person if that's what you're saying. Steel Taysom says, what side do you lean on? I'm a progressive Democrat. Expired Elf says, I believe the government should do everything it can to make sure its people are well cared for. I completely agree, Expired Elf, and I hope that that means that you are part of the coalition that is trying to elect more Democrats, because the Democratic Party, by and large, by a wide margin, I should say, is the party that does that better than the Republican Party. Albert Feinstein says there's been in a recession under every Republican president. Facts, that is accurate. J4 says, can the ICC bring charges against those who ordered the assault on the Venezuelan drug boats? They can, but unfortunately, the America does not recognize the authority of the ICC, so it would have limited effectiveness. But they 100% could, and I kind of think they should. Alrighty. JP says the Democratic Party is the Republican Party with a rainbow flag. That is inaccurate, JP. Didn't you say something that wasn't inaccurate earlier, JP? Oh, because the Democratic Party is weak. Yeah, I warned you to ask a question, JP. So we'll see you later, buddy. See you later. Scrolling down to the bottom, A-list says, I think the way people worship Trump is scary. I completely agree with that. Morgan says, wait, you don't think we should have stopped the drug boats? I think we should have stopped them, but what we did was blow them to pieces and kill everybody that was on those boats. And, you might think that people who are drug runners deserve the death penalty. And, maybe that is the case, but they also don't deserve to be murdered before anybody has proven that that is what they are actually doing. We also do not have the right to impose that punishment on citizens of other nations. We also do not have the right to attack individuals who we are not currently at war with in international waters. So what the Trump administration did in blowing up, I think, 4 boats now is a massive violation of international law, and human rights. Let's see here. Mr. Goodbar says they actually fire the FBI guy for having a pride flag? You know, that's a really good question, Mr. Goodbar. The short version is they can, because the people that would stop Trump from doing that, even if it is illegal, are not going to hold him accountable. So like right now, all the levers of power, all of the checks and balances are in the hands of the Republican Party or Republican aligned individuals like the Supreme Court. And so all the times that Trump has been breaking the law and his administration have been breaking the law have gone unpunished because the people that would do the punishing are on their team. And that's not the way that justice is supposed to work. It is supposed to be that no matter who breaks the law, regardless of if they are in your political party or aligned with your interests or whatever, they should still suffer consequences for their breaches. Son Goku says, so bring him back to the US for due process just to let him go and do it again. I mean, what are you saying there, son? You're saying that if we arrest people for running drugs, that they will then not go to jail, or that they will be extradited back to Venezuela or something. You know, I don't think that that is a good argument, son. I don't think that we are allowed to just murder people in international waters without proving that they've done anything wrong, without giving them any due process whatsoever. Your like sort of Minority Report argument that we get to murder people because of the things that we think they're going to do in the future. I think it's a really dangerous and irresponsible opinion to have. Jay Forrest says, "How do you think the government shutdown ends?" I mean, my guess is that the Republicans are going to cave. I think that the way that Trump is acting right now is not the way that somebody who is confident in their position acts. He's doing a lot more trolling and boasting than he normally does, which to me signifies that he is flailing against a reality that will not conform to his wishes. I could be wrong about that. Nobody knows how this is going to turn out. So anybody that is predicting with 100% certainty how the shutdown is going to end is lying to you. Let's see here. Son Goku says, I get that, but why bring them here if they're just going to let them go again? We don't know that they're just going to let them go again. There's no evidence that that is the case. We do not have like a revolving door justice system for anybody except for the wealthy in this country. And so, yeah, poor drug runners will most likely suffer legal consequences for if the Coast Guard catches them trying to smuggle drugs into America. Let's see here. Village Idiot says you don't understand that those cartel airstrikes almost always have intel before. The Trump administration has not proven that they had that intel. Regardless, even if they have that intel, they don't have the right to just summarily murder people, to unilaterally decide who gets to live and who dies in international waters. That is just not the fucking case, man. Like all these rationalizations for the government doing extrajudicial murders on people, it is a real fucking scary time when people are doing the work of explaining it away for the Trump administration. Like, how far are you willing to let them go? What if there's a drone strike in a blue state? Like, are you going to be like, well, these blue haired lesbians were just going to set fire to a Waymo or something, so we should have, so it's fine that they were murdered by the Trump administration? Like, how far is your rationalization willing to go? Amy says, what can be done to combat ICE just breaking down doors and dragging people out in the middle of the night? Amy, it's a really hard question to answer because, the Trump administration has given ICE a lot of leeway. They are a rogue agency. They are Trump's private army. They're his Gestapo. Like, I can't say enough negative things about what ICE is doing, the way they're behaving. It is barbaric. It is unconstitutional. It is potentially illegal. So what can we do to stop it? There's no easy answer. There used to be that app, that Icebreaker app, but the Trump administration put pressure on Apple to remove it from the Apple Store. So now it's possible that that app is no longer even available to serve as an early warning system for people. There are, groups that pop up to sort of like communicate with neighbors, and it's sort of like a phone tree where one person sees something that could be ICE and then they notify everybody, and then everybody's kind of like on high alert for, I don't know, like there have been times when ICE has stood down because there has been a massive mobilization of human beings and they have not wanted that smoke. And so I think we just need to join those groups. I think we need to be involved in communicating with our neighbors so that we can all warn each other and then, have an outpouring of support for anybody that ICE is trying to illegally detain. Um, yeah, it's a really scary time where we all have to do a lot of work to protect each other, and it's a real fucking bummer. I wish there was an easier answer, Amy. Carmine says, "What's the site?" Oh, I don't know. I'm sure one exists. I'm sure that they're also very specific to your locality. So I'm sure that your specific district or your neighborhood will have one, or if there isn't one, then start one. Flamingo Mo says, "What can we do about companies like Apple who bend the knee? Boycotting seems like not enough." I mean, that's one thing that we can do, but these companies are extremely susceptible to pressure, and so convincing Apple employees to strike, flooding their phone lines with complaints, yeah, strikes, boycotts, um, protests outside of Apple stores can be really effective. We need to make it more painful for them to acquiesce to the Trump administration than the Trump administration can make it for them to not acquiesce. And so we just have to do that work. We just need more people to do it. Right. Let's see here. Chassam says, "Yeah, it's very scary since they let local law enforcement help, since they have first contact." Yeah, that's why we all got to do the work. What's up, Triska? Good to see you again. Ensign says, "Can I join the live?" I almost never have people join, but I am what's the word I'm looking for? I am. It's not precarious. It's uh yeah, I'm wild. I sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. So keep your request on, and if the feeling spurious, is that the word I'm looking for? If I get moved by a moment, then perhaps I will bring you on. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of TikTok messages. Farrell, Mercurial, thank you. Have the day you deserve. That is exactly what I was looking for. Fletch Lives Again says, "At what point are we going to do a general strike?" We will do a general strike, Fletch Lives Again, as soon as somebody organizes the general strike. We need this. This is a movement that requires a lot of work, a lot of people, a lot of messaging, a lot of communicating, a lot of pre-thought. I don't really have the kind of job where me being on strike will be that, detrimental to capitalism. Like I'm an artist, I'm a stand up comedian. So, my independent contractor boss is not going to be mad if I tell him that I'm striking. He'll probably be striking as well. But yeah, like people need to do the work of organizing the general strike, Fletch. So do it, my guy. I'll help. I will support your general strike. I will fucking tell everybody that I know about the Fletch Lives Again strike. Mel says, "Will we get vote 218 for the fellow with the island files?" I mean, we need to pressure Mike Johnson to seat the representative from Arizona who represents the final vote for the fellow with the island files. Obviously, it's not going to happen right now since the government is shut down. But once the government reopens again, then we need to be flooding his phone lines and shit like that. Mel, all right, did that one. Zara says, "How do you feel about Israel?" It really bums me out because the government of Israel is so terrible. They are so authoritarian. They're doing war crimes against their neighbors. They are perpetuating a genocide against the people in Palestine. Yeah, it's a fucking bummer. I would hope that the citizens of Israel would do enough work to replace their government with a better one. Alrighty, no King's protest on October 18th. Thank you, Frankie, for reminding us all about that. 100%. Everybody. What's up, Allie? Good to see you again. Short says, "Can legislation pass during a shutdown?" I don't believe so. I believe the only thing they can do is vote on whether or not to continue the shutdown. But I could be wrong about that. Mel says, "Thank you again. Have a great weekend." Thank you, Mel. All right, let's get some more questions, guys. Carmine says, "I am a generous God," is what you're looking for. Excellent 300 reference. We had this question yesterday that I kind of wanted to opine on a little bit because Toasty says, "Why do people still support Trump? Misinformation, propaganda, and rationalization. The billionaire class and adversarial nations like Russia have spent a lot of time, money, and energy flooding our information streams with misinformation to convince people that the Republican ethos or the Trump world is the way to go. And people who have invested heavily in being fans of Trump, even faced with overwhelming evidence that he is a piece of shit and that he is ruining their lives, our brains want to protect our ego so badly that we will convince ourselves that the wrong decision that we made was right. And so we need to do the work of bringing those people out of the darkness. But for expediency's sake, maybe we just let them, exist as MAGA for a while. I would much rather put my energy towards convincing independents to vote for Democrats, convincing undecideds to vote for Democrats, to move squishy Republicans to vote for Democrats, to get more people engaged in the process so that we have more people, more fucking people knocking on doors and doing the work, because we just need more people doing the work. The work's working. We just need more people to do it. Jack says, "What do you think about Israel?" What a weird thing. It's weird that the exact same wording, that is the exact same wording of a question that I got earlier. How do you feel about Israel? Says T Czar. And Jack says, "What do you think about Israel?" Wait, is that not the same? How do you feel about Israel? I mean, yeah, it's weird. It's weird that people are asking me this question. And so I'll say it again. I think that the Netanyahu government is barbaric and illegal. I think that they are doing. It has been. It's not. I think it's like they have been found guilty of doing war crimes and genocide against their neighbors. And so I would hope that the people in Israel would do the work necessary to replace their government with one that isn't, you know, fucking trying to take over all their neighboring countries. N5RTN says more or less Israel and more about the government itself. Yeah, the government of Israel, the Netanyahu government, is a fucking travesty, and I hope that the people in Israel will vote them out of power as soon as they possibly can. And they should be doing the work of protesting and boycotting to try to affect what their current government is doing. Mr. 44 says, "Let's face it, we don't come out this with first world problems. Do you agree?" I think that the more people that do the work, Mr. 44, the better we are when we come out of this. The more work that we do today, the easier the work gets. The less work that we do, the scarier it gets to do the work. When you think about points in history where people have had to organize clandestinely against authoritarian governments, like occupied France or East Germany, things like that. It's scary. It is really scary because you no longer have the rights to do the kind of vocal advocacy or political commentary that we have even right now. As scary and dangerous as it is, where we can all be fired or thrown into an ice van or whatever, we are still doing it. Like we're still raising our voices and we're still doing the work. But that might not always be the case. Like they might crack down on us hard enough that people like me will not be able to do shows like this. And so what I say is we need to be screaming now or we'll only be able to whisper in the future. So, do the work now, so it doesn't become more dangerous to do it later. N5RTN says, "Does Israel even have any financial crises during these times?" I actually don't know about that. That's an interesting question. Ali N says, "With how they are wanting to withhold funds for blue states, is this indicative of another coup attempt?" Oh, yeah. The entire Trump administration 2016, Trump administration 2024 are the exact same. They are just seeing how much of a coup they can get away with. And they failed on January 6th. They failed in his entire first term. We forget how much Trump was doing this shit in the first term also, but he just didn't have the people that were doing the plan. Like he didn't have Project 2025 back then. There were a lot of Republicans elected who were not willing to go along with his fascism. There were a lot more brave Republicans who were willing to stand up to him. And so it seems worse now. It's just that they were prepared and they don't have as many roadblocks. They had a completely different Supreme Court back then, and they had different Supreme Court decisions leading up to his presidency. So 100%, it was a slow motion coup then. It is a much less slow motion coup now. Mr. 44 says, "But I can respect your opinion." I appreciate that. No allies, no country. No allies, no country. Not really sure what you mean by that. Alian says, "Are you worried about a successful coup this time around?" I mean, I'm worried that people won't do the work of stopping Donald Trump. We can't sit around and hope and pray that somebody's going to stop him for us. We need to do the work. And so but I'm confident that we can do the work. I am confident that if we get enough people, there is nothing the Trump administration can do to stop us from stopping them. You know, I am worried that people won't do that work. I am worried that we will not recruit enough people to the cause. But I am not worried that they can stop us if we do the work. Alrighty, let's see here. Let's see here. All right, slow questions day today. I did want to say one thing that I had started yesterday, but I wasn't able to finish. About somebody asked, like, should we just eliminate taxes and everybody that needs to be taken care of? We can just use charity for that. And well, I was in the middle of answering that when I was like, I got distracted. But the thing that concerns me about that model is that we are then beholden to the billionaire class even more than we already are. Like these guys give us crumbs, that seems like a really big deal to us. Like, oh my God, $1 million to this organization or $20 million to this organization, but is like pennies to them based on how much wealth they have. And then so we get less, they don't feel it at all. And then we're supposed to like thank them for it. Like that's how I feel the charity model works. Charity to me is evidence of a government that needs massive reform. Like we should not need charity. We should not need private citizens to pick up the slack of the things that the government should be taking care of. It's kind of offensive that charity needs to exist. So yeah, that's the answer to whoever answered that question yesterday. Maybe they are still here. Dream Code 151 says completely exhausted and confused. I get it, Dream Code. It's confusing and exhausting time to live. So I would just say, do your self care, take a day off, and if you have any questions that you would like me to help you clear up, then ask away or send me a DM. I can help clear things up. But as far as like not being exhausted, you just got to take your days off. You just got to take days to not read the news and disengage, watch a movie, go bowling, have a good time with some friends. Shork says if Russia is tanking because of the war, how can they afford to test NATO in Poland? That's a really good question, Shork. I have seen reporting that suggests both things. I've seen reporting that suggests that they have buoyed their economy by refocusing their entire country around producing arms for potential global conflict. But I've also seen stories about how that is, that is, what do you call it? They're quickly running out of gas in the tank. They are running on fumes. Their economy is running on fumes because they cannot sustain themselves just building, bullets and bombs and stuff like that. So I'm not 100% sure. I think that potentially the assistance that Russia is getting from other adversarial nations like North Korea is going to help them with whatever incursions they decide to continue with. But yeah, I don't think anybody knows. I think that it is likely that Russia will continue to escalate because that just seems like the kind of person that Putin is. Like, fuck my country, fuck my constituents. I don't give a shit if I have to throw every single Russian citizen into the meat grinder. I am going to expand Russian territory and reconstitute the USSR at minimum. Ace says, how likely is it for Russia to fail? I think it's probably likely that they fail, um, but anything can happen. There is a weird and concerning alliance happening economically between the BRICS nations, and so we could be looking at the birth of a new global order with adversarial nations like Russia at the top of it. Yeah, it is another reason why nobody should ever be voting for Republicans again because they have put us into this situation where I don't mind America not being the world leader, but I would be I refuse to live under the thumb of a fucking Russian dictatorship. For you, 2NV says, do you think North Korea and Russia will gang up on the US? I mean, they kind of already are, like they haven't, sent boats or planes. I mean, there have been some flyovers Alaska I've read, which is concerning. But yeah, their information war, their hacking war against America, they have already perpetuated, data strikes on us as a team, as a collective. Let's see here. Magaverse Reverse says it's difficult to gauge, but just look at their losses 20-1 versus Ukraine. Yeah, MAGA versus verse. I wish that was the case, but the population of Russia is so large. They have so many more resources than Ukraine. Yeah, it's a real war of attrition right now. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Nobody can say for sure, but we can all hope and pray. Turbo Math Guide says, "I have a trans sibling, and it irritates me. I don't know. Wait, that your sibling is trans irritates you? How come? I don't really see how what your sibling does really affects you or your life, right? Turbo Math Guides. Tell me more about that." For you, 2NV88 says, "Do you think Trump is afraid of putting sanctions on Russia?" Yeah, all of the countries that are standing up to Trump, he is acquiescing to. So China, Russia, Israel, like all the ones that have refused to go along with him are the ones that he bends the knee to. And so I don't know if it's because they have some information on him. I don't believe that there is any evidence that they have that Trump believes could hurt him because, like he said, he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it would not affect him whatsoever. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily has to do with anything like blackmail or anything. I just think that I don't know. I think that he's bad. I think he's a bad negotiator. I think he is bad at deals. I think he is bad at trying to exert soft power. I think that he is scared of getting into some sort of a war with Russia, and so he doesn't really see any other way around it except for I either push people around and they acquiesce, or I kiss their ass. I think those are his only two gears, you know. Sean B says, "My wife is unwavering in her support for the GOP based upon faith. I can't get through to her ideas." So, Sean B, I would recommend you check out a book called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. It talks about the kind of work you need to do to bring somebody out of the darkness like that. And I appreciate that this is your wife and this is somebody that you do want to bring out of the darkness. If this is like more of a general goal that you have, then I would encourage you to, I don't know, spend time doing other kinds of work to nullify the vote that your wife has. But if you really are just passionate about getting your wife out of that misinformation hole, it's going to take a lot of time and energy and work. You got to do more listening than talking. You got to ask a lot of questions. You got to figure out what it is that you can agree on. What is the reality that you can even agree on? Even if the reality is as simple as, isn't it weird that we both have completely different ideas about what's going on based on where we read the news? And then you build from there. Hopefully, you can build from there. There's that guy that has that social media channel where he just talks to his MAGA parents about politics, and it's kind of stunning the fact that he's had so many conversations with them and they just refuse to budge on even the tiniest little thing. And maybe we will see like a change happen with those two people, but it's really hard. It's really difficult because our brains are designed in a way to kind of like rationalize our previous decisions to make them seem like they're the right ones. So yeah, it's hard. And it's also really important to make that person feel safe to come out of the darkness and that they're not going to feel like you're going to say "I told you so" at them or wag your finger at them or point to everything that's going on in the world and be like, "This is your fault for voting that way." We have to give people the golden parachute, as they say. All right, Digital Foods, great to see you again. Let's see here. Triska Fawn says, "Can you please repeat the author's name?" Sure, his name is Anand Giridharadas. It's a difficult name to spell. Um, he also wrote a book called Winners Take All, I believe. The easiest way to find any book that I'm recommending is to go to my Discord. Link is in the bio. And yeah, I have a whole thread called recommendations. And if you don't feel like trying to spell his name into your Google, then just go over to the Discord and all of that information is there. Marie says, "Trying to convince neighbors who don't vote to vote." That is an excellent use of your time, Marie. And if there's anything that I can do to help there, just let me know because I think that is the most valuable work that you can be doing. MAGA Versa says he has the best hair on MSNBC when he does guest spots. That is accurate. Alien says, "Who steps in if the military is used upon us and Democrats do anything without power?" So, I mean, it's difficult because there are varying levels of the military working with the Trump administration. Like if we were to replace every single general with a Trump sycophant, if all of the captains and corporals and foot soldiers are all just on board Team Trump, then that's different. It's different than the military, an unwilling military being given an order that they feel like they cannot object to, like going into DC, for example. I think that the answer to all of this, regardless of if it is the full MAGA military or a reluctantly going along with it military, is nonviolent resistance. Whereas the Democrats don't really have the power to stop the Trump administration, the billionaire class might. And so maybe a general strike can start putting the regular amount of pressure on the people with all the money. When Erica Chenoweth writes about using nonviolent resistance against authoritarian movements, she talks very specifically about how nonviolent resistance movements are really good at recruiting. And so when the military is told to shoot at a group of protesters, the people who are holding the guns are more likely to see somebody in the crowd that they do not want to fire upon. Potentially, people that have reported on this in the past, they say like, I thought I saw my kid in there, or I thought I saw my neighbor in there, and so I decided to ignore that command that I was given. Let's see here. Magaverse says, I really think he burned whatever goodwill the generals had for him with that Quantico move. I sure hope so. I mean, all of the reporting on it makes it seem like they were all very unimpressed with his speech. And so I am hopeful that, that is going to work out in our favor. But again, we can't sit on our hands. We got to do the work. Red says, why is Trump not in jail? He is not in jail because the Supreme Court ran cover for him after he left office in 2020. So they were able to delay enough of the trials that he was going to be indicted for long enough for him to win re-election. Now that he won re-election and he has a Republican majority Congress and he has the Supreme Court, he has all the legal cover that he needs. And so if you are, like me, somebody who is like, Donald Trump is actively breaking the law in really big ways, why isn't Congress doing something about that? And you see that it's under Republican control, the question then is, hey, Republicans, why aren't you doing your fucking job and being a fucking check and balance on this White House? To me, that is clear evidence that we need to replace every single Republican politician. We got to get a Democrat in there instead, because maybe a Democrat will actually do the fucking work of being in Congress. Maybe a Democrat will do the work of expanding the Supreme Court so that we don't have such an obviously biased Supreme Court that is doing the work for the Trump administration. The Trump administration is something like 22-0 on the shadow docket for the Supreme Court, which is unheard of considering that most of those shadow docket decisions were reversing lower court decisions. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? D-Rock says, you have no clue what you're talking about. No, that's not true. I have a lot of clues about what I'm talking about, D-Rock. So if you think I said something that was inaccurate, let me know. Otherwise, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Shark says, is the military bound to SCOTUS interpretation of the Constitution? That's a hard one. That's a really difficult one. I think that if the Supreme Court had a decision that was clear about whether or not it was illegal or not to send the military into American cities, then the military would then have to abide by whatever that rule was. So if SCOTUS was like, it is illegal to send the military into American cities, and Trump ordered them to, then the generals would have to say no to that order. But if the Supreme Court does like a squishier version, like it's kind of illegal, but it's also kind of okay in these situations, then they'll probably have to just do what he tells them to do. But that's not my specialty, guys. Like that specific type of law is not my specialty. I'm kind of like half remembering things from the Strict Scrutiny podcast and, et cetera, et cetera. Ready. Name Me Mochi says, when Trump gets out of office, he will face more charges. He will if we do the work of electing Democrats. If we just replace Donald Trump with a different Republican, or we get a Democratic president, but we still have a Republican majority in Congress, then it will be a lot less likely that Trump faces any kind of accountability for the shit that he has done. For you, 2NV says, what about the 25th Amendment? We would need, I believe, most of Congress and his cabinet to be on board for that. And again, everybody in those positions is Team Trump, so they are not going to do that. Okay. Tomahawk says, thoughts on Schumer and Jeffries' leadership? So the caveat that I want to give before I criticize Schumer and Jeffries is that Their job is really hard. The Democratic caucus is very diverse, and so it's very difficult to get everybody on board with the same shit. It's very difficult to make a rainbow coalition, make everybody happy in a rainbow coalition. So they do a lot of, word salad and equivocating to try to make everybody happy and not piss anybody else off. We don't know what that job is like. We don't know what it's like. We don't know what rooms they are in. We don't know what kind of pressures they are under. That being said, I do not think that they are meeting the moment. I do not think that they are the leadership that we need right now. I would vote to replace them with other people if I could. Alrighty. Alien says, is there any chance his GOP will turn on him? Wishful thinking, but curious. I don't. I don't. Like, they had the opportunity in 2016. So few of them did. And now a lot of those people have been replaced by people that are even more bonkers bananas than the ones that were there before. So they're either scared or they're on board with the agenda. I do not believe. I wouldn't hold my breath. My breath, Allie. So sorry. Oreo20 says, so if Trump is breaking laws now, what is to say that future presidents do the same? So if Trump is breaking laws now, what is to say that future presidents do the same? Eric Swalwell actually just came out and said that we need a presidential crimes commission that is staffed with independents to, hold presidents accountable for breaking the law. And so again, we are getting the legislation to stop shit like this from happening from the Democratic Party. Like almost all the things that you guys are upset about, the Democrats have a policy proposal for stopping it. And so we can have all of that. We can have a better country. We just have to do the work of electing enough Democrats to get that shit passed. Ooh, right. Let's see here. Is that guy who asked to be brought on still here? Let's see. Has his patience been rewarded? Sir, that's there. Pirate Queen says, why can't we have him impeached now? Because Republicans are in charge of the House, and Republicans have proven that they do not care about doing the right thing. They will just do whatever Trump tells them to do. Sorry, Pirate Queen. I wish I had better answer for you. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, the guy dipped. Patience is a virtue. Bethany5 says, if we win midterms, we can impeach him, right? Yes, Bethany. All we need to impeach Trump again is a majority in the House. To remove him from office, though, we would need 2/3 of the Senate, which is going to be a much higher bar to clear. We would literally have to win every single Senate seat that is up for election in 2026. And here's the thing, it's mathematically possible. It's just very unlikely that people like you and me are going to be able to do enough work to make that happen. If we were able to recruit, 5% of the population of America to be out there convincing people to vote for Democrats in the 2026 midterms, we can 100% win all of those races. But we would need to recruit all of those people, and those people would need to do the work. When pollsters tell you that it is a virtually impossible statistically for Democrats to win, to take over the Senate, or to even get a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, what they're saying is we don't think that people are going to do that amount of work. Let's see here. Pirate Queen says, do we the people matter at all? We do, Pirate Queen, but we need to exercise the power that we have. The trick that the billionaire class in the Republican Party has played on us is making us feel like resistance is futile, is convincing us that it would be too hard or too difficult or basically impossible to do the amount of organizing and protesting and boycotting and striking to actually make a change. But it's not impossible. It's just that we, the people, haven't done it yet. Phoenix says Dems can take back 2/3 of Congress if they return to their FDR roots. Phoenix, I'm going to push back on that because, yes, I agree with all of those policies. That is the kind of Democrat that I am. But there are a lot of people in this country who are turned off by what they think are extremist Democratic policies. And while I might agree with you that that is the better messaging strategy, there are a bunch of very smart pollsters out there who will tell you that running like that in certain states is toxic and will not result in good election outcomes. I can show you exactly as many elections that have turned out good because Democrats campaigned as progressives as I can show you elections where it turned out bad and vice versa. Oreo20 says, if we can get all Republican midterm seats, we can impeach. We don't need every Republican midterm seat for impeachment. We would need every Republican Senate seat that's up for re-election in 2026 to remove Trump from office. But for impeachment, all we need is a majority in the House. And, that's probably likely, and it becomes more likely the more people that we get out there doing the work. 8R4N says, do you think Chuckles Schumer is afraid of an AOC primary? Potentially, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if him and his coalition are trying to convince her to run for president instead to take the heat off of him, of a primary challenge. Let's see here. Digital Food says, we can't have Trump impeached now because impeachment is a political vote, not a criminal court. That is 100% accurate, Digital Foods. Okay. GG Cure says, need to impeach a couple of SCOTUSes too. 100%. Like the value of replacing every Democrat, every Republican in office with a Democrat is that we can do all of these things. It would just be really hard to do for a bunch of different reasons, for the electoral advantages that Republicans have because of things like the Senate map and gerrymandering and the Electoral College. Because of the financial advantage that Republicans have, where they are aligned with the richest people on the planet, including people like Vladimir Putin, who is adversarial to America. The information environment is skewed to benefit the Republican Party. Like, there are a lot of things working against us. But the thing that we have, that the advantage that we have, is that there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And so if we can get people out there and doing the work, then we can win this. Okay, Max says, do you condemn Senator Krause's invasion of Parthia? What should Caesar and Pompey do? That's not really my expertise. I'm more about contemporary American politics. Let's see here. Curtis in Hurdle says, real median household income, Trump plus 10.6%, Biden plus 4%. I don't know if that's accurate, Curtis. Yeah, I doubt that highly. Maybe you're looking at the first Trump term when Trump inherited the Obama economy and Biden inherited the post-COVID Trump fucked up inflation economy. But contemporary Trump, like this administration Trump, that is 100% not true, Kurt. Sean Brown says, how do you feel that the Democrat approval rating is in the toilet? I mean, the Republicans aren't doing better, and if they are, it's marginally. And I think that a lot of the shade that gets thrown at the Democratic Party is wildly unfair. I think we're seeing polling that reflects an information environment that has been weaponized against the Democratic Party because the billionaire class is threatened by the Democratic Party. Clutch Jake says, politics would be better if they banned lobbyists. I do not disagree with that. Curtis and Hurdle says, I'm talking his historic administration, which was the evidence we had when deciding to vite. Curtis and Hurdle, I would encourage you to get your news from different sources because the reality is that people had less money during the Biden administration because of mistakes that Trump made during his administration. And so I would ask you to take a look around right now at inflation going back up after Biden brought it back down, as costs go up, as they are cutting taxes for the rich again and fucking us all over by cutting funding for services. Do you really think that this is indicative of a president who's like really good at the economy when he promised that he would bring prices down on day one and they are going up faster than they were before? Toon says, LMAO, what lies? They're not lies. Let's see here. Jarrett Berenstein Bears. If Biden claims to bring it down, he can't avoid responsibility for bringing it up. Curtis, that is a weird thing to say that doesn't make any sense. Japan had 8% inflation during Biden's term. Oh, so did Biden do that? Did Biden give Japan inflation? Or is it more likely that the Trump administration fucked up COVID so badly that it spread around the world and then everybody was suffering from inflation? Curtis says, no, Japan did good on inflation and we did better. We had the best post-COVID inflation of any Western nation, and I'm including Japan in that. It's like industrialized nation is what we mean by Western nations. Curtis says we did not. All right, well, you're out of here. You're just spreading lies. So we'll see you later, man. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Curtis and Hurdle. Yeah, that I should have blocked him earlier. AB says Republicans don't understand facts and logic. I mean, people that are, people that had their education, people that have their public schools massively defunded by the Republican Party, unfortunately, are much more susceptible to misinformation. Okay. Okay. Clutch Jake says, honestly, both sides are trash. Both sides spew out misinformation. So, Clutch Jake, are you still here? Shoot me a message. I want to see if you're still here. Oh, here we go. It's not hard to see both parties do that. Both are terrible. Okay. So, let's talk about this, Clutch Jake, because this is something that I feel very strongly that you are inaccurate in. I think about every conceivable metric the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party. If we look at their policy platforms, if we look at their history in office, both federally and statewide, if we look at the number of lies told, if we look at the corruption, if we look at everything suggests that the Democratic Party is leagues better than the Republican Party. But if there's a specific issue that you think they match on, let me know and we can discuss it. Pink Squirrel says one is less trash than the other. If you ask me, yes, but the Democratic Party is a lot less trash than the Republican Party. Like when people say that lesser two evils thing, it makes it seem like it's a close game. It's not a close game at all. Like the Democratic Party is better, like by a lot. Alrighty. Jen says, why are Democrats so worried about civility in this political climate? So the Democratic Party, the analogy that I use is that they're in an abusive relationship with America and American media, where they get yelled at no matter what they do. And if you have ever seen somebody who is in that kind of toxic relationship and how they are always walking on eggshells and have to be so careful about what they say, it mirrors what the Democratic Party is doing, like to a T, because they go out there and they start talking to people and they get yelled at for not doing the work, and then they do work instead, and then they get yelled at for not doing more messaging, and then they get yelled at for being too far to the left and too far to the right and doing too much and doing too little. And so I think that what they are trying to use as their bastion is being unimpeachable, of being perfect in every way, of being the right answer for every American. And you cannot say that they have stooped to the level of what the Republican Party is currently doing. And whether that's a good strategy or not, I think is kind of open for debate. But I think it's a perfectly reasonable reaction to the way that America has treated the Democratic Party for the past 50 or so years. Thank you, Saint Monkey. I appreciate that. Jenny X says, could we get them therapy? I mean, I think we should just replace them with younger progressives. Like let's all do the work of getting out there and voting in the primary, and then potentially we can get Democrats who have not been, not had their fucking noodles turned to mush by getting yelled at for everything that they do. El Toro says Dems are evil. That's not a question, El Toro. Ask a question. Are you going to get booted? Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and boot you because I don't see you being here in good faith. Fog War Production says, can we get Mitch McConnell on an episode of Hot Ones? I mean, it'll probably be like a 5-hour long episode because of how often he freezes up. Max Kurt says, should landlords be tipped by renters? No, of course not. Absolutely not. Maybe if our rents were reasonable and we had landlords that were really good at taking care of all of our issues and replacing things that needed to be replaced and fixing things that needed to be fixed, then yeah, I could see tipping our landlords. But right now, they got us fucking over the barrel and they're having their way with us. Thank you, Gen X. I really appreciate you being here. MAGA versus being risk averse has allowed them to be preyed upon by the Republicans. 100%. Somebody, I think maybe it was Dan Pfeiffer, made this analogy where he said, not analogy, but he said, the Democratic Party is so scared of losing that they'll never win again. And I was like, that is perfect. That is 100% perfect and totally accurate. Tom Jones says 17T pledged in U.S. investment because of Trump more than all past presidents combined. So Tom Jones pledging $17 trillion in investments does not mean actually delivering $17 trillion in investments. And even if that investment came in, it pales in comparison to how much money we are losing by Trump fucking over our economy, by creating an unemployment crisis, by starting a trade war, America versus everybody. Like cost of living is skyrocketing and unemployment is going up as well. Like that is the worst possible combination of factors. Yeah, slowing economy, dollar losing its value, like them investing $17 trillion into our economy will be fucking pennies compared to the damage that Trump has done. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate you being here as well. Yeah, Tom Jones, you just keep on saying the same false thing over and over again. So we'll see you later, buddy. Alrighty, let's see here. It's the Rocketeer. Tom Jones donating money. It's not unusual. Mwah! No notes. Chris Ortiz says Long Island conservative, wondering can Mandani's policies help Long Islanders? 100%. I'm sure you don't. You guys in Long Island have a different mayor? I forget if the mayor of New York City has jurisdiction in Long Island. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure he does actually. Yeah, yeah. Mamdani's policies are going to help everybody. The Democratic Socialist platform is to have an economy from the bottom up, which means that like no matter where you are on the economic ladder, if you are a poor person or a middle class person or a rich person, everybody benefits from assisting the bottom of the economy. So yeah. Why, Chris, do you consider yourself conservative? Do you have any specific issues that push you to be conservative in ideology? But I want something to help. Yeah. Well, what ideology? Tell me about it. Fogworld Productions says, "Why do New Yorkers like to pretend that they're mean when they're so nice?" I think that the New Yorkers being mean thing is a holdover from the '80s when New York was much more of a dirty and dangerous place than it was. But yeah, I consider myself a New Yorker. I lived there for 20 years, and yeah, we're dope as hell. New Yorkers are great. Bit Nevo says this is the end of mainstream religion. Politics has exposed the global weaponization. Religion, um, religious practices have been decreasing in popularity for a really long time. So I don't think it's going to happen for a long time before we see those numbers like fully zero out, and we might never ever see them fully zero out. But yeah, the trends seem to be in people eschewing religion. Let's see here. Chris Ortiz says, I'm a Bible believer separatist. I don't want war. I don't want to pay for wars. I just want to raise, I'm assuming, like your kids, is the end of that sentence. That's interesting, Chris Ortiz. I would love to engage with you on this further if you were my family, not be bothered, and have less taxes, less government interference. Yeah, Chris, I would love to engage with you on this. I feel like there's a lot to dig in on there as far as like who you potentially vote for and what policies you would advocate for. So, if you'd be down for that, send me a DM. But if not, just come back to these live streams more and then we can get into it here. Jesse Campbell says, how many people have been murdered under communism? I mean, not as many people have been murdered under capitalism. That's for darn sure. Also, there's never really been a communist country. Every country that calls itself communist or socialist is actually authoritarian. Chris Ortiz says, but I'm willing to hear out policies that can make life better. I appreciate that, Chris Ortiz. I am not judging anybody who is open-minded, regardless of how they are voting or have voted in the past. Lex says, do you think MAGA realizes Trump is bailing out Argentina for $20 billion to rescue their economy, and then they just turn around and raise taxes again and then sold all of their soybeans to China? I don't know if MAGA knows about that because they're probably not seeing that on wherever they get their news from. Jesse Campbell says, I wish I had recorded that answer. Which answer, Jesse Campbell? About capitalism killing more people than communism. Well, I'll happily repeat it, Jesse, because it's accurate. Jay says, all communists are authoritarian. Every country that says it's communist is authoritarian, but the philosophy of communism is not authoritarian. The philosophy of communism is literally community. It is communal. It's in the name. Let's see here. Max Hertz says, do Democrats perform ancient Babylonian rituals? No, they don't, Max, and I think you know that. Scott Clower says, hard to believe deep red Southerners worship a loudmouth from NYC. Yeah, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled. Let's see here. Tygo says, I'm from Brazil and I hate funk because here's why. The words are bad. People don't understand real cartel in Brazil. Use it to brainwash. People don't understand. We can debate about it. I mean, I don't know anything about the politics in Brazil, so I couldn't engage with you on that, Ty. So sorry about that. Digital Food says, I am the only one who remembers when Tom Jones was just a good singer. Are there other things about him besides his like massive dong? Alrighty, let's get back in here. Oreo20 says, now the Dow is up. Why? I thought the stock market would be down due to tariffs. I mean, so a lot has been written about this where there are a bunch of things that are sort of like propping up the American economy right now. The size of it, the number of natural resources that we have available to us, the fact that tariffs are on and then they're off and then they're back on and they're being renegotiated and like nothing's really on paper. And so the markets are reacting weirdly, where, we saw a similar thing leading up to the financial crash in 2007, where a lot of these financial institutions were being held up by houses of cards. And it just took I forget what it was. It was the mortgage default rates to cascade to the point where it was impossible to pretend like this wasn't happening. I'm predicting that something similar is going to happen to our economy, but nobody, no matter how much they claim to be an economic expert or whatever, can predict when or how or why economic crashes are going to happen. But every economic expert is saying that all the warning lights are blaring red right now, and so it is likely, but again, nobody knows for sure. Right, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Fog War Productions says we don't call it Argentina, we call it retirement home for war criminals. Yeah, a lot of people with German accents down there in Argentina. That's pretty weird. Carmine says, "What's your favorite Bad Bunny song?" So my wife makes fun of me for this, where whenever something is really popular, I like to dip into it just to see if I'm like into it or not. It's the reason why I started listening to Taylor Swift and what else? There's a bunch of other ones that I was just like, yeah, I don't understand why this like Kendrick. I started listening to Kendrick during the beef because I was like, people seem to like this guy. I want to check it out. But I have not dipped into Bad Bunny at all. Like my wife and I went to see that movie, Caught Stealing, that he is in, and she laughed when he came up on screen, and I was like, I don't know who that is. But what I've heard sounds pretty cool. Might not be my fucking thing, but you know, uh, seems cool to me. I guess I might not listen to it on a weekend, but I might dance to it at the club. Diego Vargas says, "Are they crashing the economy on purpose so that rich people can buy everything when we go bankrupt?" That I have heard that theorized, and I do not doubt that that is a potential motivating factor. Fog War Production says, "My Argentinian grandpa has a jacket with lightning bolts on it. I think he was an electrician." You guys, I got really good regulars on here. You guys are really cracking me up. Alrighty. Digital Foods with JP says, "Am I wrong, or are the Amish communist?" I don't know too much about Amish culture, but if I had to guess, I would say they are, basically. James Rush says, "Why do Americans think the Republicans are thinking of America first when they're destroying it?" So, James, there's a difference between Republican politicians and Republican voters. There's a lot of different kinds of Republican voters, where there are rich people who know exactly what's going on and they're like, we don't care that everybody's getting fucked over because we get to be richer. There are racists who are like, I am proudly racist and I do not care that the Republican Party is taking a dump on my face so long as they're taking a bigger dump on brown people. And then there are people who are just not getting accurate information. They're getting their information from bad sources, and they are in communities of people who are also getting their news from the same sources. And so they just have this Ouroboros of confirming everybody's prior opinions that makes them believe that the Republican Party is doing things that they're not, and vice versa. And so I think that they hear the words "America First" come out of a Republican president's mouth, and then they think that that is true, and then they see on Fox News that Trump is putting America first, and then they believe that. But yeah, I think it is obvious that the Republican Party is not putting America first. They're putting Donald Trump first. Muzz King says, "In the club, we all fam." That is accurate. James Rush says, "Thank you for your response. Very respectful." Well, thank you, my guy. I wasn't always like this. During the first Trump administration, I was going fucking scorched earth. And if I knew someone was MAGA, I would be like, "Fuck you, you did this, you fucking piece of shit. You're an idiot." I loved owning people, in debates and in comment sections and stuff like that. But I just don't think that's productive anymore. And so I'm trying to do this a different way. I'm trying to do a non-debate version of convincing people to vote for better politicians, for Democratic politicians. Rob28 says, "Both sides are hypocrites, but we aren't ready to talk about it." So, Rob, I disagree with the both sides narrative. I think that if you look at the specifics, if you look at the data, the Democratic Party is a lot better than the Republican Party. We're not even talking about just like the lesser of two evils. We're talking about the lesser of two evils, and one of them is like way less evil than the other one. If you want to talk more specifics about that, Rob, I can get into it. But by every conceivable metric, quality of politicians, quality of policies, track record in on both the federal and the state level, the Democrats fucking win it in a landslide, my guy. But yeah, tell me if there's a specific issue you want to dig into, and we can get into that, or you can send me a DM, and I will happily get into it there. I'll happily get into it with you there and send you whatever data I have. BitNevo says, is society ready for an AI president and leaders? No bias, no lying, pro humanity. There is no evidence that AI is not lying to us. In fact, there is evidence of the opposite, and that should terrify everybody. Oi, White Tiger, both sides are evil, corrupt. Again, inaccurate. If you want me to prove it to you, I will. Send me a DM. I will happily send you the data. Oh, excuse me. Woo! Tomahawk says, will farmers vote for Democrats in the midterms? Unclear. There are some farmers who I think are connecting the dots between Trump's policies and their lives getting harder. I think there are other farmers who are going to be convinced that the reason why they're struggling right now is because Democrats are not helping Republicans do more shit. I think that there are other farmers who are going to get a bailout potentially from the Trump administration and then be so thankful that they got money from Trump that they are going to continue voting for him in the future. So I don't know. I don't think we should. I don't think we should count on that. I think we should do the work of convincing people to vote for Democrats and not just expect Republican voters to turn and join the right side of history. Mac Daddy Shrimp says, why do the left promote violence? They don't, Mac Daddy Shrimp. Would you like me to go into more details on that? Or are you just here to throw shade? Grumpy Cat says, do you have any Republican politicians that you like? And if so, why? So the foundation of the Republican Party, at the very least, if you want to see what do they all have in common, it's trickle down economics. That's basically it. Some of them are more anti-climate change than others. Some of them are more anti-gun control than others. But the basic foundational thing of the Republican Party is cutting taxes for the rich and increasing taxes on the rest of us. And that is a really, really bad policy. And they know it's a bad policy. Like, we have the data. We've been doing this shit since the 80s. Income inequality is worse now than it was during the Gilded Age. Trickle-down economics doesn't work. So regardless how good of a Republican politician you are, you're still really, really, really bad. That being said, I will give full kudos to any Republican that has been brave enough to stand up to Trump and his bullshit. It is so clear how disastrous that is for Republicans. Like, they get death threats. They ruin their political careers to do this thing. It's extremely brave. And so even though I think Liz Cheney votes like a psychopath, even though Mitt Romney is a rich asshole, Adam Kinzinger, Jeff Flake, like, if you are still hyping up trickle-down economics after what we've seen for the past 50 years, then you fucking suck. But you are at least brave enough that I will give you that respect, Kimberlina says, how do we fix the wage gap? Tax the rich, use that money for government and social programs that lift people out of poverty. That creates a larger base for people to buy things. And so all those people buying more things means that companies become more profitable, means they can expand and hire more people, which means people have even more money, and the cycle goes on, and our economy becomes rich and strong and doesn't crash as many times. Digital Food says, have you learned how to confront with empathy from Steve? No, opposite. The fucking heckler murderer himself? No, of course not. I do this in spite of Steve, And I'm teasing, obviously. Steve is a wonderful person who has helped a lot of up and coming comedians, more than maybe any comic that I know, any professional comedian that I know. But no, absolutely not. He and I are not aligned on this at all. I think he's going pretty hard against MAGA. Let's see here. Saint Monkey says they need to fix the minimum wage, or how can it work? 100%. I completely agree. They need to increase the minimum wage. Let's see here. Lowski says tax to rich only works on paper. The money will just move out of America. So rich people can't just take all of their money out of America. Like, there are a lot of mechanisms by which, we then tax that money that is trying to leave the country. There's a reason why rich people buy, like, gems and then try to sneak them into other countries so they can avoid getting taxed both as they're leaving and as they're going into those countries. So the idea that rich people are going to leave is suggesting that there is no recourse for stopping or punishing rich people from moving their businesses and riches to other countries. But there are. With Republicans in charge, it makes it a lot harder for us to enforce those penalties on the rich. But if we had the kind of government that was down with taxing the rich, then we would also have those policies that would keep them from just moving their companies and their treasure to other countries. Right. Let's see here. Lowski says, not rich people, the corporations. That stands for the corporations as well. Lowski, the Democratic Party during the Biden administration was working with every other westernized nation on a minimum corporate tax that would make it so that companies would not be incentivized to just go to a different country because they were being taxed even less there. The race for lowering corporate taxes in order to attract corporations is a fucking race to the bottom. Like, you end up spending more to have a company in your country than any benefit they could possibly deliver. And the world has started to realize that. And that's the reason why the Biden administration was working on that. But that's not happening anymore, obviously, because the Trump administration is cool with that. They are cool with billionaires owning everything and fucking us all over. Alrighty, Ayn Rand wrote a book that we couldn't get by without the wealthy. The opposite is true. That is 100% right, Scott Clower. Ayn Rand is fucking hysterical. People get their economic theories from her, but she was a fiction writer. Droid Man says, didn't they try to tax the rich back in the 70s and it failed? No. In the 70s, we had, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure the highest marginal tax rate that we had was like 90% in the 1950s or 60s or something like that. And we had a booming economy back then. There were other factors that fucked everything up in the 70s, including things like, an oil shortage and, Nixon's economic policies of, setting prices and stuff like that. Inflation, stagflation, I think, was going on during the 70s as well. But yeah, that's not related to taxing the billionaire class. The Droid Man says, I don't think the issue is one side or the other. Everyone on both sides is bought. So, Droid Man, that is inaccurate. I will happily get into this with you if you like. I have a problem with trolls who just kind of come on and say things and then leave. So I'm not going to do my speech about this if you're one of those people. But if you would like me to explain to you why the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party by a wide margin, like it's not even a close game, I happily will do that. Kimberlina says, why can't I get implement for tax brackets? What would ideal tax rate for highest brackets? So the tax bracket, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking there, Kimberlina, but the system that we have not the system that we have, but a better system would be a progressive tax rate where you make this amount of money, you get taxed at this rate, and then the next $1 million that you make is taxed at a higher rate, and then the next $1 million you make is taxed at a higher rate, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know what those exact numbers should be, but I do know that it should be high enough that no billionaire ever exists. That's my opinion. Droid Man says, who's not bought? So there are politicians on both sides that are bought, but the difference is staggering, where the platform of the Republican Party is pro-billionaire. So obviously they attract a lot more billionaire investment in their campaigns. Then the Republicans cut taxes for the billionaires, so they have even more money, and then the billionaires use that money to then help elect Republicans again. There are Democrats that are corrupt. Senator Menendez, for example, had fucking gold bars from Egypt and shit like that. There are Democrats who are not corrupt, but do accept billionaire money because they want to stay competitive and make sure, and elections are expensive to run. But there's a difference. There's a difference between a Democrat accepting billionaire money and it affecting them by causing them to water down the Democratic platform, which is pro-worker, versus the Republican platform, which is anti-worker, pro-billionaire. When they get elected, that billionaire money doesn't have any work to do. It is just supercharging the pro-billionaire agenda that the Republicans were going to do anyways. So yeah, there's a difference. It is still better to have a Democrat who is accepting corporate money than a Republican, because at the very least, that Democrat is still going to do the Democrats' platform, pro-worker platform. They just might not do it as aggressively or thoroughly. They might do it in a more business-friendly way than people like you and I might like. But it's still better. It's still a lot better. Let me know if you're convinced, Droid Man. Let me tell you. Tell me how you feel about that. Right. Overstreet Family Crew, good to see you again. Says, are the posts on the government websites not a Hatch Act violation? They are a Hatch Act violation. Overstreet Family Crew. But the thing is, Trump violated the Hatch Act in his first term, and there were no consequences. And then the Supreme Court said that he couldn't be held legally liable for the things he did while in office. So what's fucking stopping him, my guy? You know? Droid Man says, we will just agree to disagree. Lobbying needs to stop. I agree that lobbying needs to stop, Droid Man, but can you at least acknowledge the difference in scale between what happens when not only how much more money Republicans get from billionaires, but also what they do with that money that they get from billionaires? Droid Man, let me know how you feel about that. Florida Man says, it is adorable how you bypassed my post to cherry pick something that you can come back. Adorable. I didn't see your post. Oh, here we go. Florida Man says, so why do the vast majority of billionaires support the Democratic Party? Riddle me that, Batman. Because they don't. They don't. And the reporting that you potentially are referencing is extremely misleading. I've read that article, and if there's other data that you have that you want me to talk about, I will. But here are the facts. Here are the facts, Florida Man. And let me know if you're still here and listening. But here are the facts. 75% of all billionaire political donations go to the Republican Party. 75%. And that is because the platform of the Republican Party is a giveaway to the billionaire class. If you were a self-interested billionaire, would you support the party that cuts your taxes or the party that raises your taxes? And the Republican Party is the party that cuts billionaires' taxes. Trump has more billionaires in his cabinet than any president in history. The billionaires are literally pulling the strings right now. So yeah, billionaires do not mostly support the Democratic Party. It's the opposite. Let's see here. Droid Man. Yeah, let's see here. I don't think so because Kamala got billions more than Trump in way fewer months. That's not accurate, Droid Man. And I will happily send you that data if you send me a DM. Righty. Let's see here. Florida Man says, just because you say it doesn't mean it is even close to the truth. Florida Man, I don't really care. I don't really think that you are in here for accurate information. But if you would like me to send you the proof that the things that I'm saying are accurate, send me a DM. But you won't because you don't really give a shit. You just want to push this agenda. Right. Okay. Carmine. Ron Banale says, name one proposition the Democrats have done recently. Well, the Democrats aren't in power. They have exactly no ability to do propositions. So, you know, I can tell you about what they did during the Biden administration because they actually had some political power. But right now, everything that happens in this country is owned by the Republican Party because they're the ones that are in charge of everything. They have literally every lever of power, including ones that they are not supposed to have. You know, like the Supreme Court is not supposed to be owned by one political party, but the current Supreme Court is. Okay. Okay, scrolling down. Alien says Florida Man is typical Florida Man. Yeah, accurate. Right. Florida Man says he will not give the source publicly and claims he will send it privately. I mean, I don't have all these things memorized, Florida Man, but I can tell you that the figure of 75% of all billionaire donations going to the Republican Party comes from a former labor secretary, Robert Reich. And, you know, you're not going to Google that guy. You're not going to go find that information. So I offered to send it to you. And as far as like Trump having more billionaires in his cabinet, you can just Google that. Who cuts taxes for the rich and who increases taxes on the rich? You can Google that. Like all of this is Googleable. There's no like numbers that I'm going to read to you that are going to convince you, you know? Florida Man says that is absolutely not true. The majority of the Democrats are monetarily supporting the Democrats. The majority of the Democrats are monetarily supporting the Democrats. Yeah, Florida Man, just because you say no doesn't mean it's not true. Again, Florida Man, I'm not going to just sit here and have a he said with you where I say one thing and you say no. It's not productive, but I don't think you want to be productive. I think you want to get into a fight with me. And so I'm going to block you, you know? Okay, let's see here. Digital Foods, you're cracking me up. Florida Man says, why would Trump not have a majority of Republicans in his cabinet? He does have a majority of Republicans in his cabinet. And also, he has more billionaires in his cabinet than any president in history. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Florida Man. I let you stay because you asked a question, and that is the only metric that you need to stay. Florida Man says, block me. Your content is worthless anyway. Well, then what the fuck are you doing here, man? You're telling on yourself, dude. Let's see here. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap things up soon, but thank you so much for all of your questions and your comments and your likes and your shares and your gifts. It is your support that allows me to keep on doing this show, and I think the show is helping. I hope it is. If there are any questions that you have when I am not streaming, then please shoot me a DM or email me. My project of getting more people engaged in politics and getting more people educated and involved does not stop when the live stream is over. And so, if there's any way that I can be a resource for you to be a part of this work, I want to be that resource for you. So, please use me and abuse me. Use me till I'm all used up. I am here to be a resource. Rob says, what can Democrats do to get power back? So Rob, your politics should be your comedy act. Pack, I do have politics in my comedy as well. So Rob, the Democratic Party is doing what they can to win elections. You know, they are raising money from donors, they are doing messaging strategies, they are barnstorming the country, they are fighting the Trump administration, they're doing everything that they can. It might not be enough. Like, it is my theory that the way that we stop the Trump administration, the way that we get Democrats back in power, is that people like you and me do that work. And there's a lot of different things that we need to do. There's a lot of work that needs to get done. So in addition to doing the work ourselves, we also need to recruit people to do the work. And then they need to recruit people, and then they need to recruit people, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nobody who's going to save us. There's no agency, there's no group that is powerful enough to stand up to the power that Trump has right now and the billionaire class. It just doesn't exist. The Department of Justice is not going to save us. They're in Trump's pocket. The Supreme Court is not going to save us. They are in Trump's pocket. So we have to do the work. But here's the good news, is that if we do the work, we win, because there's a lot more of us than there are of them. Okay, QN says a lot of people need to get shot, right? No, absolutely not. I do not advocate for violence. I condemn it in the strongest possible language. And QN, if you've ever seen my show before, you know I say that like 10 times a live stream. Thank you, Allie. I appreciate that. I ate your taco says Silicon Valley and Hollywood are who runs the left. That is untrue. Silicon Valley is libertarian. They're like techno-libertarians. And so they were all fucking behind Trump and during the inauguration. Like, every single social media platform is owned by a right-wing billionaire. So you can dismiss that nonsense. Okay, what else? I would encourage you all to check out my Discord channel. Link is in the bio. That is a great place for recommendations for podcasts, for books, and also for things that you can do to be a part of the solution, to do the work to get us all out of this fucking hellscape that we are currently living in. It's also a great way to get in touch. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Link is in the bio. You can buy things from my store. Link is in the bio. And you can also send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube, and you can be super subscribers. And, you know, I don't know all the various mechanisms that you can send me money on the various channels. But if you want to, you can. They are available to you. Ow! Ow! You are not going to believe this, guys, but I literally just hit my balls just then. Oh, boy. Okay. Pack says, do you know what % of the government takes money from AIPAC? I'm sure a lot of them do, but they also take money from other lobbying organizations too. I find the focus on AIPAC as the only bad lobbying organization when the Heritage Society and the Federalist Society exist to be a little anti-Semitic coded. Okay. I Ate Your Taco says, both sides are terrible. I would argue that the Republican Party is a lot worse than Democratic Party, and I would happily get into that, but I am wrapping up the live stream because I'm tired, and also I just hit my balls. Fight for Charlie says, this is what happens. Non-thinkers vote for Democratic people that read books vote for freedom. That's actually statistically untrue, Fight for Charlie. The less education you receive, the more likely that you are to vote Republican. That is not shade. That is just a statistical fact. It does not mean that people that vote Republicans are dumber or more gullible, but maybe there are things that you learn when you get an education that make you less susceptible to misinformation and propaganda. Alrighty. All right, everybody, I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for being here. Pack says calling it anti-Semitic is just a bad look for you, kinda sus. You know, Pack, in a world where anti-Semitism is on the rise, where anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are on the rise, I think it's important to call out weirdly, specifically, focusing on APAC when the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society exist. I don't think that what Israel is doing, you know, um, let me rephrase. What Israel is currently doing completely justifies us focusing on Netanyahu and on APAC. But it is such a short leap from what APAC is doing is wrong, what Netanyahu is doing is wrong, to Jews are evil and they control the world, that it is a concern. And as a Jewish person, I feel justified in raising that concern. You can say it's a bad look, and also you can miss me. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Do the work, please, and recruit other people to do the work because things are ramping up in the Trump administration. Things are very scary right now. We only get out of this if we all do the work. Have a good weekend. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self care is part of the work. And I will see you guys on Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.